Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled you're tuning in, because today we are unpacking one of the most incredible, genuinely awe-inspiring stories of human resilience you will ever hear. We're talking about a legendary, record-breaking ocean survival story that frankly defies all logic. So let's jump right in, because what starts out as just an ordinary day on the water quickly spirals into a survival tale that is definitely gonna stick with you.
Now, if you spend any time online, you've probably scrolled past a viral rumor or a crazy clickbait headline asking this exact question. Did a man really survive being stranded at sea for 5 whole years? I mean, it sounds like a Hollywood script, right? Half a decade just completely adrift, lost to the vastness of the ocean. It's exactly the kind of internet myth that spreads like wildfire and gets us all debating about what the human body can actually handle.
Well, it's super easy to get caught up in that 5-year myth, but let's separate fact from fiction right out of the gate. The documented reality, this man was adrift for roughly 14 months. Now, I know busting the 5-year myth might seem like a letdown, but hold on, really think about that factual number. 14 months. That is well over a year floating on the open ocean in a tiny boat. So the myth might be busted, but let's be real. 14 months is literally just as mind-blowing and honestly, a lot more terrifying because it actually happened. Part 1. The Descent into Disaster, the 2012 departure. Okay, so to understand how this whole nightmare began, we have to look at the man at the center of the story, José Salvador Alvarenga. He's a Mexican fisherman born in 1965. Back in 2012, he heads out from the coast for what is supposed to be a super short, totally routine fishing trip, the kind he'd done a million times before. And he wasn't alone. He had a teenage fishing companion with him named Ezequiel Cordova. Just 2 guys heading out for a day's work, completely oblivious to the fact that their lives were about to change forever. But then, the unthinkable happens. Just out of nowhere, this catastrophic, monstrous storm rolls in. It violently batters their tiny vessel and completely destroys the boat's engine. So suddenly, they are stripped of their power, stripped of their ability to steer, and these 2 fishermen are left entirely at the mercy of the wind and the waves. And those waves just start pushing them further and further out into the deep, dark expanse of the Pacific Ocean. Part 2. Surviving the Pacific, the cruel ocean. So the terrifying reality of their situation really starts setting in. You're adrift. You have almost zero supplies. How do you stay alive? Well, when the ocean gives you nothing, you have to rely on absolute desperation. Picture this. You are literally catching fish barehanded, just relying on pure reflexes. You're grabbing sea turtles that happen to swim a little too close to your crippled boat. And most crucially, you are desperately collecting rainwater however you possibly can whenever a storm passes over. It's a raw, brutal existence that takes an insane amount of ingenuity just to fight for one more day. But, human willpower does have its limits, especially when you're up against the unforgiving open sea. And tragically, Ezequiel Cordova eventually died. The harsh conditions, the severe lack of proper food, the physical toll, it was just too much for the teenager. And this left Alvarenga completely and utterly alone. Try to imagine that. The agonizing heartbreak of losing your young friend, combined with the crushing, silent weight of total isolation out in the middle of nowhere. Part 3. An unimaginable weight, drifting thousands of kilometers. Time just works differently when there's absolutely no land in sight. 438 days. I really want you to let that monumental number sink in for a second. That is exactly how long José Salvador Alvarenga spent drifting helplessly across the Pacific before he finally saw land. 438 days. Every single one of those days was an active, grueling battle against starvation, dehydration, and just totally losing his mind. Let's actually map this out to put the sheer scale of the journey into perspective. The whole nightmare kicks off in 2012 when they leave Mexico. A few months later, that fateful storm hits, the engine dies, and the endless drifting begins. Day after agonizing day, month after month slowly ticks by, until finally, in January of 2014, Alvarenga washes ashore at the Marshall Islands. He had drifted across thousands of kilometers of empty ocean. Part 4. The Power of Endurance, a Verified Miracle. When Alvarenga finally washed up on the Marshall Islands in early 2014, his body was pushed to the absolute brink. I mean, he was incredibly weak, and yet, miraculously, he was alive. This makes his journey one of the longest verified open ocean survival stories ever recorded in human history. So we're not just talking about some wild internet rumor anymore, right? We are looking at the hard, documented facts of a man who somehow outlasted the impossible. And I think this quote just hits the nail on the head for our main takeaway today. His story shows just how powerful human endurance can be when survival becomes the only goal. When you strip away all the noise and distractions of modern life, and literally all that's left is that base, primal instinct to stay alive, the human spirit can endure things that seem entirely impossible to the rest of us. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final profound thought to ponder. What would you be capable of if survival became your only goal? It's pretty wild to think about. Thank you so much for joining me to uncover the real truth behind this unbelievable story. Until next time, keep asking questions and keep learning.